I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. The Department of Justice has informed Judge Aileen Cannon, the federal court judge in the Southern District of Florida, that the special counsel who was just appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland, Jack Smith, will now be appearing on all court filings before her court on a going forward basis. This comes a day after the Department of Justice notified the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, the Court of Appeals that oversees the district court where Judge Aileen Cannon sits, similarly, that Jack Smith would be appearing on all court filings going forward and will be approving and has approved all arguments and pleadings to date. Let me read for you right now the filing by the Department of Justice in Judge Aileen Cannon's court. The Department of Justice states the following: the United States notifies the court that under the authorities, including, and it cites the statutes related to special counsels, the Attorney General has appointed a special counsel, Jack Smith, who's a member of the New York Bar, to conduct certain proceedings in the Southern District of Florida and elsewhere, including the investigation that gave rise to this case. The appointment letter signed by the Attorney General and Special Counsel Smith's appointment affidavit are attached as exhibits to this filing. Going forward, the special counsel's name and bar number will be affixed to pleadings filed in matters under his authority. And so when it refers to including the investigation that gave rise to this case, that's throwing some subtle Department of Justice shade at Judge Aileen Cannon, because the investigation that gave rise to this proceeding was the search warrant that was executed at Mar-a-Lago on August 8th, a valid search warrant where a magistrate judge, Judge Reinhardt, found probable cause on August 5th, which the Department of Justice then executed the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago on August 8th and found the stolen property that they were looking for in the search warrant, namely thousands of government records, including approximately 100 or so top secret records, our nation's highest top secret documents that Donald Trump had not just stole, but then obstructed the Department of Justice for nearly 2 years and lied to the Department of Justice and had his lawyers submit false declarations to the Department of Justice to try to throw the Department of Justice off their tracks, which is itself a crime of obstruction of justice, which is punishable by up to 20 years in prison for each obstruction count. And when I say that the Department of Justice was throwing shade in here, Judge Aileen Cannon should never have involved herself in this matter in the first place. And so while Jack Smith is giving notice to Judge Aileen Cannon that his name will be affixed to all future filings in her court, I don't think there will be that many future filings in her court. So Jack Smith's kind of coming into her court for a victory lap here because, as I've always been saying, right here on the MeidasTouch Network, I was 99% sure the Department of Justice would prevail in its expedited appeal before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, challenging Judge Aileen Cannon's assertion of equitable jurisdiction regarding the remaining records, which are part of the special master process. You'll recall the 100 classified records that the Department of Justice found when they executed the search warrant had already been returned to the Department of Justice when the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the Department of Justice's emergency motion for a stay, returning the classified records and finding that Judge Aileen Cannon did not have equitable jurisdiction regarding those records. And as I always said, it's the same arguments regarding the remaining 11,000 other documents at issue, which the Department of Justice previously won when they got those 100 classified documents back. And after hearing the oral argument before the 11th Circuit on Tuesday afternoon, it is beyond clear that the Department of Justice is going to prevail in their appeal. In fact, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal judges, by the way, it's 3 Republican judges. There are 2 Trump-appointed judges and 1 George W. Bush judge. The George W. Bush judge is Chief Justice William Pryor, and then you have the 2 Trump-appointed judges. Now, the 2 Trump-appointed judges had previously been on the same panel that ruled in favor of the Department of Justice previously regarding the classified record. So without even hearing the oral argument, I was convinced that the Department of Justice was going to win when I heard early Tuesday morning the composition of the panel. But then after listening to the oral argument, the 3-justice panel basically literally, they asked the Department of Justice, they said, so how would we fashion our order to overrule Judge Aileen Cannon? Would it be an order vacating with instructions? Would it be how do we overturn her order? Can you help us craft our decision to overturn Judge Aileen Cannon? Is it vacating her injunction or something else? So the Department of Justice has a good indication they are going to prevail. And during the oral arguments, when Trump's lawyers, Jim Trusty, made the argument, the justices were not having any of it. And they're basically asking them, like, well, if there's not a single case ever in the United States that supports your argument for Judge Aileen Cannon to assert equitable jurisdiction, not one case, what are we even here for? Pre-indictment, if the judge doesn't find that the Department of Justice engaged in unlawful conduct, yet alone the higher standard, a callous disregard for the rights of an individual being investigated, if those findings are not made, those are threshold findings for finding equitable jurisdiction. And as the judge pointed out to Trump's lawyers, you don't even address the issue in your brief. Like, all of the things that you filed have nothing to even do with the core issues here. And while perhaps your legal briefs maybe are part of your PR strategy that you argue to the right-wing media echo chamber that you speak in, here in the court of law, even where you have 3 Republican judges on the 11th Circuit, we're not buying this argument. Your argument would upend the entire separation of powers if federal judges like Judge Aileen Cannon can willy-nilly assert equitable jurisdiction and stop the executive branch, a judiciary, stopping the executive branch from engaging in its criminal investigation. You can't do that unless there's this extraordinary finding, which did not take place here because a magistrate judge, Judge Reinhart, found there to be probable cause. The Department of Justice executed their search warrant. They found the stolen stuff. And then they needed to continue their investigation, and Cannon was like, no. So the point of all of this is Jack Smith's involved. He's not going to be involved for that long before Judge Aileen Cannon, because I think she's going to get overruled any day now by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. But one important note I want to make is the following. The grand jury proceedings, the criminal grand jury proceedings that have been investigating Trump, both for the January 6th insurrection criminal conduct, as well as 2020 criminal election interference. And there's another grand jury for Donald Trump stealing these government records, including top secret records. There are 2 grand juries. Those grand juries aren't in Florida. Those grand juries are in Washington, D.C. They're being overseen by a presiding judge, the chief judge of the Washington, D.C. District Court, Judge Beryl Howell. And for more than a year now, the Department of Justice, before the appointment of the special counsel, has been very diligently going through the steps that you need to take in those grand jury processes. So, if there were to be criminal charges, and I believe when there will be criminal charges filed against Donald Trump. They would never have gone before Judge Aileen Cannon at all. The only reason that Judge Aileen Cannon is even involved in this case is because when the Department of Justice had to execute a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, they had to go to a magistrate judge in the Southern District of Florida that had jurisdiction over the Mar-a-Lago property in Palm Beach. So that's why they went to a magistrate judge, Judge Reinhardt. Now, why did Judge Aileen Cannon get involved? She shouldn't have, is the answer. She never had jurisdiction, and that's what the 11th Circuit's going to find. But when Trump filed a motion for judicial oversight with Judge Aileen Cannon around August 21 or 22, and she ruled and granted the motion for judicial oversight on September 5th and appointed the special master, the basis of her jurisdiction, though, was that the property that was searched was in Florida and was in Palm Beach, and that's where the Southern District of Florida is. That's the only reason why we're talking about Florida courts, because it's where the property is. But in terms of where the jurisdiction over the crimes, the January 6 crimes, the theft of these government records, jurisdiction there would be in Washington, D.C., and that's a good thing also from the standpoint of the prosecutors, because as we've seen with the Department of Justice, they have an almost 100% success rate with their January 6th insurrection trials before Washington, D.C. juries. So much so that a lot of the insurrectionists were trying to not have their cases go before juries or go before judges, but not having that much success there either. So it being in Washington, D.C., and it being a potential criminal prosecution, that is good news for justice. But what this filing also shows, Jack Smith, ready to go. He is geared up. He's read the filings. He's already caught up. And as I told you a few days back, for all the people saying this is going to delay more, I said no. Things are going to go quicker now with Jack Smith and Jack Smith's mandate. And look, Trump's terrified. He's attacking Jack Smith's wife. He's attacking Jack Smith. But that's stuff that may have worked. It shouldn't have worked, but may have worked when Trump was president. Now that he's not the president anymore, he doesn't have Bill Barr protecting him. He doesn't have an attorney general's office protecting him. When he's threatening Jack Smith, when he's threatening Jack Smith's wife, that is what is called obstruction of justice. And those will give rise to new criminal counts, or at the very least, be used as evidence on the underlying obstruction charges. And Jack Smith's like, okay, you want to go there? Bring it on. When we get this case to trial, I'm showing each and every one of your pathetic posts to the jury to show your criminal intent. So keep on talking, buddy. Keep on talking. So the wheels of justice move in the right direction. Slowly, but move in the right direction. Jack Smith, appearance entered. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button right now. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to you. Hit the subscribe button now. And in addition, check us out at our Patreon site. We have lots of great exclusive content that you could only get at Patreon. But most importantly, if you become a patron of the MeidasTouch Network, you can help grow this independent media platform. We're not funded by any outside investors at all. Zero. So none of the both sides media or the pro-fascist media who are funded by all of these millionaires and billionaires. We got none of that. We don't want that. All we need is you and this community together. So if you can, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. No worries if you can't, but it may be worth checking out. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.